right, so let me just introduce myself. I'm Dr. Angela, and I just joined KTJ recently. And the funny thing is, the day I joined, the next day the school closed for the MTO. So did not have much time to get to know the school and everyone else. But I joined as a Global Perspectives subject coordinator. So I'm actually coordinating the Global Perspectives course. Perhaps some of your students are taking that course right now. And in the next term, I will be taking on the post of head of biology. Currently, I have been tasked to run the Medic ECA for the lower and upper six. That will also begin in the next term. And this Medic ECA basically prepares our lower and upper six students for entrance into medical universities. Right, so we look into the application process, we look into the preparation for university entrance tests, essays, work placements, university interviews, and so on. Right. So I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, which is on the pathways to medicine. And we know that many people are interested in this. So I hope that this session would be useful for you. Here we are going to share with you a lot of support that's available. And we are joined today, very fortunate to be joined today by Wendy Jones, who is the director of the sixth form. And she will be talking to us about the pathways that our students will be taking to these medical schools and the available support that there is that we can give to our students. So please do feel free to type in your questions as she is presenting, and use the chat function. Yes, I can see that everyone is using the chat function, so thank you. And your questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. So just to let you know that this session will be recorded and it can be viewed from the KTJ Facebook page as well, or on the school social media site. All right. So now I would like to pass the time to Miss Wendy Jones.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. I hope you'll find it useful. So, as Angela said, if you have any questions, do write them in the chat, and then we'll deal with them at the end as well. So, medicine is one of the most competitive applications a student can make. So if you have a budding doctor as a child, then good luck. So the purpose of our presentation today is to talk about the various pathways that are open to you, and what you can do to support your own child, and then what KTJ does to support their students here into making successful applications. You will see there that that is my address, so that you can get in touch with me at any time, and I will follow up with any questions that you may have if you think of something after the webinar. Okay. So there are many pathways to medicine. You know, I think the first thing to say is that obviously when students come to KTJ, or when we have students here already, sometimes they think that the only pathway is to the UK, but there are many different options that suit a variety of different people. So we're going to look at a little bit at that. And we're also going to talk about how you can prepare your son or daughter for this really competitive application, and the sort of barriers that you need to consider that can hinder an application. You know, sometimes it might not necessarily be the correct path. So some of the things you have to think about are, you know, is it a burning ambition? Do they have a real sense that this is something that they want to do and have wanted to do for a while, and have started to research in depth what it means to be a doctor? I often smile inside when I hear students say, well, Miss, I'm thinking about being a doctor or an engineer, because they are two completely different professions with very different skills. So one of my first questions is why both of those? And really, perhaps if you're thinking of those two kind of very traditional pathways, one or other of them might not be suitable. So you really do have to have a burning desire. They talk about vocation, don't they? And I think that is true. Students, it's a very long course, it's a very expensive course, and they have to be truly committed to be wanting to do this. Also remember that in Malaysia at the moment, there is a traffic jam in terms of housemanships available, and that is something that you might want to consider. So they really do need to be keen and interested in this path and motivated. So I'm also going to talk about what we do in KTJ ourselves, and then we're going to talk about competitive applications, particularly to the UK, because they are one of the most competitive. There is a quota for international students, and that can range from 4 or 5 students in a cohort for the whole wide world, up to could be as many as 20 plus. So that does make it even more competitive. We'll be looking at some undergraduate routes, a little bit about postgraduate routes, and the foundation route. So we're going to talk about a few things, and then, as I said, we'll talk about the support that we offer and what you could be doing as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the undergraduate route. It's 4 to 5 years. It's, as I've said, very, very competitive in the UK, but not just in the UK. It's very competitive if you're applying to courses in Malaysia as well, or in Ireland, or in Australia, or any of the other places that you can think of. It is a competitive application. They are expecting excellent GCSE or SPM or equivalent grade. So we would typically expect a successful applicant to have a wide range of A's and A stars, and a strong science background. So they would be looking at A's and A stars in their biology, their chemistry, and their maths in particular. They'd obviously then need to go on and get excellent A-level grades. The typical offers in the UK now range from A star AA to AAA, depending on where you are looking. And again, they'd be looking for chemistry, biology, and then maths quite often. But then if they're doing 4 subjects, they could perhaps do something that's a little bit different. So if they're still interested in the arts, or they're interested in drama or theatre or music, then that can be a nice supplement as well, because it shows different skills. So excellent A-level grades that they will need. There will also be a Ucat or a Bmat admissions test. So this is a separate test that universities ask for. This is a requirement in the UK. Australia have a similar one, and so do Ireland. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And again, you have to take that in the year that you were applying, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail. But that kind of helps them to sort out from the millions of applications that they get. So it is really important. There is also an English language requirement, as you would imagine. English needs to be good because they're going to be communicating in that language to patients and so on. So that can vary depending on universities. So Edinburgh, for example, I think it's a 7.5 in IELTS across the board. Some places accept IGCSE English with a minimum of a B, but usually with the components. So you do have to look individually at different universities, because they do vary massively. And work experience, transferable skills, and maturity, and a real sense that they understand what they are letting themselves in for is really, really important. And I'm going to show you later how you can support your child to demonstrate that. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the postgraduate route. Obviously, I don't have much to do with that because they've all left us by the time they get to that. But this can be a good route for those students that perhaps were not successful in getting into medicine first time round. And sometimes that can be because some universities only accept graduates on some courses, or there is an minimum age requirement, or they just feel that the student lacks a little bit of maturity and needs to have a little bit more of a world experience before they go into something as difficult and challenging as medicine. So typically a student would go would go through postgraduate through having done a degree in something like biomedical sciences, but that's not always the case. And I put this link here, which is the Medical Portal for the UK, and it does talk a little bit about the different postgraduate courses available, and you will see that there is a mixture of courses that demand a science-based course, but some that are happy to take you with a different degree background. So it's important that you check. Obviously, you can check this website, but more importantly, check the websites of the universities that you'd be interested in. There are entry grades, obviously, and there is a different admissions test as well, so still competitive. And then finally, there is a foundation, and I think that this is more for students that are thinking about staying in Malaysia. There are some brilliant Malaysian pathways to medicine. As I'm sure you're aware, Malaysia has top healthcare, some of the best healthcare in the world, and that comes from training in country as well as out. So, don't be afraid. I think sometimes students some of the conversations I have with students who may not be successful are, well, what's more important? Going to be a doctor and training in the UK, or training in Malaysia and guaranteeing that you're a doctor there too. So that's a conversation that's worth having. Like, if you're really, really desperate to be a doctor, then and you didn't get your first choice, which might be the UK or the island or whatever, then do apply for IMU. And for some people, that is their first choice, and costs can come into that as well. Obviously, something to bear in mind with the UK and Ireland and Australia, they're very expensive. And that is something that would be one of the most expensive courses in the UK. So that is a consideration. And there are some brilliant courses, undergraduate courses and foundations in Malaysia that you can look at. So typical ones that students might be interested in, or seem to be the most interested in, although there are others, is IMU. NUMED, which is Newcastle Medical College down in JB, and also the school in Penang is very, very popular. So those are the three most popular that our students want to apply to as well. There are a few university courses in the UK where you can do an undergraduate foundation for medicine, but those are only if you've happened to have chosen the wrong A-levels, and then you've decided midway through your A-levels that perhaps you want to be a doctor after all. But again, these are highly competitive, so it's worth looking into, but places are very limited. So we have had students that go on with perhaps lesser A-levels than they would have hoped to go on to the foundations at IMU and Newcastle Medicine as well, and have gone on to go on to the degree as well. So sometimes the student may need an extra year to polish up their biology or their chemistry, particularly their chemistry, and this can be a good way of doing that as well. And if they really have their heart set on medicine, then sometimes this is a better route for them than if they go into a degree in biomedicine or something. So, you have to have those conversations with your child, but it's worth thinking about. Okay, so we're going to talk now a little bit about how you can help to prepare your child for the competitive application that is medicine. And as I said, that it's competitive whether you're applying abroad to different countries or whether you're applying to Malaysia as well. So we talked about, things like how can you support your child, and we talked about the biggest barriers. I think some of the biggest barriers to students being successful is if they are receiving too much pressure from parents and it's not something that they really want to do. So that's really important, having those conversations and making sure it's a career choice that comes from them and their hearts, not just because, there are generations of doctors in the family, or, perhaps you're going, be a doctor, lads, good money, good career prospects. There are lots of good career prospects out there that don't involve 6 years of education plus all the rest that goes on after that. So they really have to want to do it. And I think, every student that applies for medicine will have to go through an interview. And these guys are experts at wheedling out the students that don't really have much of a passion for it. And for every one student that they're interviewing, there are hundreds of students that would easily take their place. So they are going to take the best of the best and the most motivated and so on. So that can be a barrier. So it is really important that the student really wants to do it, or your son or daughter really wants to do it, please don't pressure them into applying for something that you think is a good profession, which it is, but they're like, actually, I want to be a ballet dancer. Okay, to keep it extreme. So how can you support your child? Well, start early. The earlier the better. And I would say from as early as Form 4 if they show an interest, but obviously they won't really start showing a genuine interest perhaps until they do start the sixth form. But I would say from Form 4 onwards, or Year 10 onwards, you can start having those kind of conversations if they have expressed an interest, or you think they might be interested in that kind of profession. And the sort of things that you can start doing perhaps is reading around the subject. So starting, finding out what is going on in the world of medicine that they're interested in. In Malaysia, for example, what's happening with dengue, and why is there dengue, and why does it spread so fast, and what are the cures, or how are they trying to support communities to fight against it. Or it could be obesity, or it could be high blood pressure or cancer, anything really. And there's always lots of things in the news and in magazines about health related issues. We're all interested in it. So starting to build up a portfolio of knowledge about the world of medicine and related to current affairs, and kind of striking up conversations about why that's interesting, and getting them to think critically about the world of current affairs and medicine is really, really important. Work experience is really important. Obviously there are issues with that right now, and I'll come back to that later, but any kind of work experience actually is good. If they can do some work experience and shadowing with doctors and so on, then that's great. If they can do voluntary work on a regular basis, even better. And also, if they can have a Saturday job or an evening job or a weekend job or a holiday job, paid or unpaid, then that is really, really good as well, because what that does is it helps them to develop really good essential transferable skills that will be good for any application actually, because employers increasingly want graduates that can go into a workplace and slot in nicely and have some transferable skills already. So people will already be working in the UK perhaps on a Saturday job, so getting them to serve customers, work in a cafe, they're involved with communication skills, they're involved with active listening, empathy skills, the maturity to manage your time and tasks. So all of these things that are going to be important later. So I've talked about a little bit about academic issues and academic reading, and then getting involved in any ECAs, and I'll talk a little bit about our ECAs that we offer at our school in a little bit as well. And obviously, good academic preparation is key. You just will not get a successful interview. We won't even get to interview for the UK and Ireland if you don't have the baseline A levels. And it's the same in Malaysia. You do have to meet the baseline academic profile first before you can really progress any further. So if you have a child that is keen to be a doctor, but they're really struggling with their chemistry and their kind of C's and D's, then that's not really going to perhaps be a profession that they're going to enjoy, maybe because they've got lots of studying ahead that's going to involve science. So either get them some help so that they can improve in those skills, talk to their teachers. But I think the earlier that you can start that, if you can identify that, you're a little bit weak with this particular science or maths or whatever, then you've got time to do something about it so that they can perhaps still fulfill their dream. Okay. So I'm going to now talk a little bit about UK applications, because as I've said, they are highly competitive. There is a quota for international students across the whole world for UK universities, and as I've said, that can be as few as 4 or 5 or as many as kind of 30. So you do have to take that into consideration, and your child will be competing against people from all over the world, so it's important to get it right. You will need to do the admissions tests, you will need some work experience, and then you will be applying with a reference, a personal statement, and you will definitely have an interview. For the UK, if you are applying to the UK, you will need to go to England for an interview. Occasionally, some universities do offer Skype interviews, but it does depend on what type of interviews they offer, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. The personal statement will be really important, as will the reference, and I'll talk about that as well. So when you apply, you will apply through Ucat, which is the university portal, and that will gather all sorts of information about that student. They'll want to know their academic results as well, and they will look at everything and consider them very, very carefully. Something to bear in mind, though, for a UK application is that you have 5 choices. You can make 5 applications. However, for medicine, you can only make 4 applications out of the 5 for medicine or veterinary science or dentistry. And the reason for that is because they are highly competitive. And so the 5th choice is considered the backup course, and that could be anything health science related. So it could be biomedical science is one of the usual ones that students go for, because that's kind of like the most similar, really. So, making sure that students are kind of practicing these things and getting used to interviews and things is key, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Irish applications and Malaysian applications, and actually Australian applications for medicine are a lot more straightforward than the UK ones. Generally, they all involve interviews, though, and some form of personal statement, but the kind of degree and depth is different, perhaps for Irish and Malaysians as well. So at KTJ, we have a really good relationship with the Irish Consortium of medical universities, and they come to our school every year and give a talk and personally hand out applications that we then send to them. And the good thing about Ireland is that they interview in Malaysia as well, so you haven't got the expense of trying to juggle lots of interviews abroad, and the expense of trying to get them all together, and you don't know when they're going to come out. So that's really useful. And obviously, Malaysia is on your doorstep, so that's fine too. Usually, in terms of when students are interviewed, students will be interviewed around about January onwards, and can be as late as March. Before, for interviews as well. Some students will get put into like a pool, and they'll be informed, like they're kind of like a near miss, if you like, and they will be informed that they're on a waiting list, and they may well get a place later on. And typically we have 1 or 2 students each year that will get offers from different universities in the UK. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the admissions test now. There are 2 types. So there's the Ucat, and there is also the Bmat. So the Bmat is typically for Oxbridge and Imperial and UCL, okay? And Ucat is for all the other universities, and this is an essential. You have to do this. So all 26 medical schools require Ucat. Registration opens on the 1st of July. I put this link here because obviously this year, with everything that's happening, we don't know what's going to happen with the test centres and whether they're going to be open. So what Ucat is doing is they have a different system where you can take the test online. So you can click on that, register, and then you will take the online test in the privacy of your own home. So what we recommend at the moment is that students do register on the 1st of July, and they choose when they are going to take the test, and then they obviously work towards that test. So it is better to book a test right about the 1st of July, because then you get the first clickings of the centres in Malaysia. So places do fill up very, very quickly, and you could end up otherwise having to travel to a different country to take the test, which is really annoying. So register early, and then if you're planning to take it in a centre, if you're able to take it in a centre, then you can book that as well. But I would probably recommend right now that you do the online version at home. So there are testing centres all over the world. It's a 2-hour test, and there are 5 sections. There's verbal, quantitative, abstract reasoning, decision making, and situational judgment questions. And usually our kids are very good at the quantitative and abstract reasoning and decision making, but they tend to fall down on the situational judgment questions. But this is really important because obviously a doctor needs to assess a situation very quickly and carefully and make decisions and appropriate decisions. So quite often that will be one of the cut-offs of the benchmark. So if students don't do well in their situational judgment, they may not be shortlisted. So some universities, or most universities, have a minimum overall score for further consideration. So basically they will benchmark it and say, okay, everybody above here in these percentiles will go to interview and anyone below will not. You can find that information quite easily on any website for a UK university. So they will publish what the successful students, what percentile they were in and what kind of scores they got, and typically what they're looking for. And obviously different universities look at the Ucat in different ways. So some put more store by it than others. So you do have to do your careful research in terms of the universities that you were applying to and what they are looking for in terms of your results from the Ucat or the Bmat. So the Bmat is part of the Cambridge and Oxford University admissions tests. This year this will be held on the 4th of November, hopefully. And we are a Cambridge and Oxford admissions test centre here for our students. So any student at KTJ can take the Bmat in the safety of school as well. So that helps to support them. So part of our Medic ECA, students will be given lots of support and practice with these kind of questions and getting them used to it. It is not the sort of test that you can learn, as it were. So it's not like chemistry where you can learn your chemistry and then you apply it to your exam. But it is something that you can get used to, the type of questions that it asks, and not be fazed by them, and the speed at which the test goes as well is going to be really, really important. So getting them used to that test and getting them used to the style of questions, which can often be very different to the things that they've seen in the past and can be quite off-putting to start with, is going to be key there, and getting them used to the situational judgment questions and what they're looking for and the kind of things that they need to think about when answering those questions. Okay, so interviews for the UK, there are two different types of interviews. There is the traditional panel interview, where you have the candidate and 3 or 4 people interviewing them about different aspects. And there are also multiple mini interviews, or MMIs, okay? The MMIs, they usually have 6 to 8 stations, and they will be at each station for about approximately 5 minutes, and then they'll be whisked off to the other one. And they will have lots of different types of activities. So some will test their ability to communicate well under pressure. Some of them will test their logical reasoning skills. Some of them will test their abilities to look at a situation and act quickly. There may be role play situations to see how well they communicate. There may be different types of practical tasks. I'm thinking about, putting blocks in the right order and so on. And there will be some basic applied mathematical tasks as well. And also they would have a little bit about kind of ethics in there. So they may have to discuss an article, so they'll have to kind of read the information, consolidate that, kind of work out what the article is saying, and then discuss it, find out what the main points are, and think critically about what they have just read. And there will usually be some forms of questions that focus on ethics and dilemmas within the medical profession as well. So it does put them in their paces. And again, this is something that I'll talk about later, but this is something that we prepare our students for quite well in our ECAs and within the sixth form. So we would also avoid questions like, it's always interesting, we usually give our students 2 or 3 different rounds of practice interviews for both types. And it's very interesting when you first start off and the typical question, which will probably be a warm-up question for a medic interview, would be something like, so why do you want to be a doctor or dentist or vet? And the common answer tends to be something along the lines of, well, I really enjoy science and I want to care for people, so this seems like a good profession. And we kind of say, no, don't say that. So we talk about how they can apply what brilliant skills they have to answer that question in a different way, or use their experiences that they've had to answer that question in a more informative and more dynamic way. So that's something that we teach our kids, how to answer the questions to the best of their ability, and how to be used to the kind of MMI questions and the pressure that they're under in those things. One of the things that puts admissions tutors off is when, and apparently this happens quite a lot, is where one of the favourite things that they do is they kind of blindfold somebody and they have to direct them on a map to a certain area. So they're like, to go up a bit now, turn left, and things like that. And I was quite surprised to hear that some students get really, really frustrated, like, no, left, and obviously that is not going to go down well in terms of communication and empathy. So having a go at these things and remaining calm, and particularly for, I think, an international student, the ability to participate in discussion, participate and communicate well in English is going to be something that they're going to look for as well. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we prepare our medics at KTJ, and we do that in many ways. So we first of all have a multiple destination policy in the sixth form. So we would encourage students to apply to the UK, but as I've said, it's very highly competitive. So we would also encourage them to apply to the Irish Consortium, and as I've said, we have a really good relationship with them, and they come in and look after our kids very, very well. And I think actually it's very interesting to hear how the interviews go, because you can kind of see everyone seems to get an interview, and then they're like, so what offers have you had? Not what offers were, but where are you applying for? So they can kind of pick out who are likely to get offers as well. So they're quite strategic with their offering, I think, as well. And there's some fantastic, absolutely fantastic medical degrees in Ireland, whether that's Dublin or Cork. And there's a whole wide variety, Trinity, and we have students that have gone to those and been extremely happy. Cost can be another factor with that as well. One thing I should say about all UK university applications is that you do have to be aware that the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Health have a list of approved universities that they want their graduates to have studied in, and basically if the university is not on that list, then they're not going to be able to practice medicine in Malaysia. It does get updated fairly regularly, so it's important to keep an eye on that when you are thinking of applying and helping your son and daughter with that, and we do as well. So we have a multiple destination policy. We think about Ireland, we think about the UK, we think about local. So generally students will perhaps apply to 2-3 different countries at the same time, so that they can really, and then by the time it's this time of year, they can really sit down with me and discuss the offers that they've got on the table and decide what they want to do. And that's really empowering for the student, gives them lots of confidence as well. So we also make sure that any student that perhaps we think haven't necessarily got the grades now, but then they've gone on and done really well. They may not apply to an undergraduate course, but we know that when they get the results, oh look, they've actually managed to scrape through what they need, and in which case we would support them still for a post A-level application. And we do have 1 or 2 that decide to go to Australia just because they want to go to Australia, and we support them remotely as well through those applications, even though they've left it. So really, throughout KTJ, they get a hands-on, individualised support throughout the whole of the sixth form, and their applications are carefully managed and supervised throughout really, and that can come in the form of checking that they've got the grades that they need, so checking that they're on track academically for what they want to apply to, checking that they've got the right kind of experience, checking that they've got a good personal statement that ticks all the right boxes, and checking that their Ucat score is good for the universities that they want to apply. So that is key, and that happens around about early October when they get the results back, and just before they have to apply There's absolutely no sense in applying for a university that has a percentile way above what they may have. So matching them to the correct university is also key. And also age is important. Some universities do have a minimum age limit, or and sometimes that can be a little bit older than usual courses. And some say that they actually want students to apply after they've got their A-levels. Some universities like Exeter don't want students to apply while they're doing their A-levels. They would rather students apply once they've got their A-levels and perhaps are able to be a little bit mature and have got more experience in life as well. So helping students and supporting them to choose the right universities is key in our pastoral support and our academic support within the sixth form as well. There is an early deadline, so they will apply by the 14th of October, but it's likely that they won't start getting interviews, as I've said, until early January onwards, really. So they have a long waiting game there. But making sure that they are supported is key there. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit in more detail about the support that we offer. So lots of different destinations is important. We also have, as I said, our medical ECA, and within that ECA there's a 2-year programme that starts even if they are just have a little tiny seed of an idea that they may want to go into medicine, dentistry, or veterinary science, and we would encourage students to come along to that ECA and to explore, the issues surrounding medicine, the ethical issues, doing some reading, doing some mini research projects, or encouraging them to do an extended project, so that they can really get a feel and start building up the academic and transferable skills that they're going to need. So we have lots of workshops that look at wider reading, current affairs, how to articulate their reasons for wanting to be a doctor, and kind of not looking at their personal statements and not just kind of like making sure that it is a regurgitation of everything that they've done, but looking at what's inspired them. We have some very lovely alumni that come back regularly, and they will do workshops on things like what it's really like to be a first-year medic or second-year medic, or how to get into Imperial as a medic, or all these. So they share their expertise in coming in. So particularly those students that manage to get 4 out of 4 offers, and we do have students that do get 4 out of 4 offers. Having them come back and speak to the new lower 6. Or while they're still here, speaking to the lower 6, and their experience of going through the application process and sharing what made their applications good, I think is really, really powerful. So they will have workshops on references, and again, that's really important. So we'll sit down with the student on a one-on-one basis and make sure that their references are of high quality, that it matches, so we kind of have their personal statement and their reference, and we'll look at it to make sure we've covered everything that's important in the application. And then they will go through a process of several practice interviews, and that usually starts in this term, but obviously with the constraints that we've had, we've not been able to do that as well, but we're continuing with the medical ECA, and we will be right back there in September. We're following up with these students, but they all get feedback on each process of their practice interviews, and we talk about areas that they were good at, but areas that they need to consider for the next time. And then when we have their second or third interview, we would expect them to have improved upon that and to have worked on that area. And sometimes we do need to even have some intensive support if their English isn't particularly good or something. Then that could be even as detailed as pronunciation or enunciation of words, so that they come across well. So we do a lot of interview practice as well, as all the support that goes into the ECA. We have a very vibrant ECA, as Miss Angela said, so we'll talk about ethics, we'll talk about current affairs, we'll do the admissions test practices in there, we'll have speakers come in, local doctors coming in or alumni coming in to talk about different areas of medicine. We've got great university links. So we'll often get universities coming in and giving academic lectures on a whole wide variety of things. So lots and lots of support. So yeah, I've just been through that really. So we have Oxford Society talks. We would encourage them to do an EPQ. EPQ is an extended project qualification. It's an A-level, but it is research based. So that can really support an application for medicine because they can go in depth in an area that they're interested in. And interestingly enough, last year, to show how important that is, I think, last year one of my students, he narrowly missed. So he had 2 or 3 offers for medicine. He chose the ones that he wanted to go to, and then he narrowly missed his offer on A-level day, and he got 2 A's and a B for his chemistry, and we were all like, oh no. But he got an A* for his EPQ, and because of that, he was given his place. Because his EPQ was all about a medical related issue. It shows he could write well, shows he had the academic rigour, and that really did push it over to being somebody that perhaps they wouldn't normally accept, but they did. And I think actually that form of academic enrichment and curiosity is going to be even more important this year and next with the impact that COVID has had on society. Then obviously students haven't been able to go into hospitals to do shadowing work. They haven't been able to do as much voluntary work as perhaps they had. So this is another way that you can show that you have researched your career that you want to go into, and that you have a realistic idea of what you're letting yourself into, and that you have a passion for it as well. So an EPQ or a smaller research project that explores an area of medicine that they're interested in can be very powerful, I think. So we would expect them to do that. So we talked about these are kind of some of the ethics and current affairs things that we've talked about recently. And we also do a little bit of a kind of beginner's guide to the NHS, because students generally get asked about the NHS, National Health Service in the UK. So they would need to know what that is, when it was established, why it was established, and I guess the challenges that it is facing now in terms of funding and in terms of who they prioritise. So a typical question, and this kind of comes into ethics and kind of comes into situational judgment as well, might be, you have 2 people in the hospital, one is an elderly lady, one is a young girl, who would you save, who would you give the transplant to? And those are kind of typical questions that they might ask, which covers all sorts of ethical, moral issues and situational judgment issues. So it's good to familiarise themselves with those kind of arguments as well. I said work experience. That's some of our lovelies from a couple of years ago, helping out at an old people's home. So within the school, our community service is quite strong in the school. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved with Interact or Leo or Red Crescent and all of these societies that interact as well. I didn't say that. They will go out in the community and maybe they're working soup kitchens, maybe they will go to orphanages or refugee centres or old people's home, and the kind of activities that they might be doing, they might be helping students read, or they might be just being a companion to an old person, holding their hand, listening to them, those kind of things. So, or in a soup kitchen, they might be delivering food or serving food or helping out in the kitchen. And I think these are really good things to do for life anyway, right? We do have a charity in KTJ that we're affiliated to. There's a charity called Enzing in Mantin, and so lots of our students go and help out with that community there, and that could be teaching them English or helping them with other skills as well. So it's plenty that they can be doing really, and that is an essential part and something that they can do within the school, but also outside as well. So personal statement, this is a source of much anxiety to our students applying for university, and it's really important part of the pathway for medical related degrees in the UK, but it is also something that other universities in different countries ask for as well. So for the UK, it is a 4,000 character, so character includes the full stops and the spaces, statement, if you like. It's their first covering letter, if you like, as to why they want to study the subject that they're applying for. So the kind of things, I've kind of summarised what various universities look for in their personal statement. And you can see that it's an opportunity really to talk about their motivation for studying medicine or dentistry or veterinary science, their insights. What they don't want is a big long list of I've seen this and I saw, some students get carried away with the fact that they've seen surgery or they've seen the dentist do something amazing, or they've seen I did have a child wax lyrical about the fact that the way that a vet takes a temperature of an animal. I'm going to go no further than that, but I was like, that's not something that you need to wax lyrical about. But what they're interested in is the insights that what you saw gave you into the profession. So how did it excite you? What does it make you think about what doctors that or vets or dentists do? What kind of characteristics did you see that you were impressed by, that you think you need to have? So it's those kind of things that are important. So when you're discussing your work or voluntary experience, it's really about what the student learned from that, what experiences they had of helping and serving people, and how did they feel about that. They can also talk about paid or unpaid employment, or something that they've done in school perhaps that shows that they've got that service mentality. Outside school activities and hobbies can also be used to good effect, and the skills that they've employed and developed over their time in school is also important. They can talk about leadership, teamwork, time management, communication. These are all the kind of high skills that are going to be important as a doctor. And again, they will get their own individual tutor that will help them through writing a very good personal statement. The sixth form team will then also have a look at that and make sure it's very, very good. And it will also be something that the medical ECA group will look at as well, to make sure that they're doing the right things. I've just put this together. About 2 years ago, I presented at a CIS, Council of International Schools conference to do with higher education admissions, and I actually presented with Bristol, Cork, Edinburgh, UCL, Queen Mary and Nottingham. So I spoke, so I delivered the session, half the session on kind of what support schools can give, medical applications, and then they did it from the point of view of a university, and we kind of both came together with so this is what it looks like really. But that's a kind of a little guide, if you like, of how they use things. So you can see Bristol, they don't really look at the personal statements, and they're quite unusual, and you can see that everyone else does, and they actually look at the personal statement very, very carefully, which is why we spend a lot of time on it, and they do score it, and that can make the difference between being offered a place or invited to interview and not. They will use the reference as a confirmation of basically what they're saying in their personal statements, and also they want to see that the child is good at sciences. All of the universities expect students to have very strong foundation in the sciences, and maths also helps. And really, if they're below A grade for the UK and for Ireland, then they're not really going to be accepted. I think requirements in Malaysia are a little bit different, and I think that comes down to there's less competition, and therefore they haven't felt the need to inflate their offers to the same degree as the UK. Doesn't mean to say they're any less of a course. I think sometimes our students think because it's easier to get into IMU perhaps than UCL that it's a lesser course. It's not. It's all down to how many people they have apply and all sorts of things like that. And you can see here they've given a little idea of what type of interview they would expect students to have, and therefore you can prepare for that well. It also tells you here the different types of admissions tests. That should be the UCAT, not the UCAT. Anyway, for some of the Irish ones, then they do ask for different test sometimes, but because students here, we have a relationship with them, they do accept the Ucat as well. So it's something you need to look into as well. Okay, so that is about everything from me. I hope you found this informative. If you have any questions, then I'll be delighted to answer those. I put my email address there as well, so you can jot it down or take a picture of it. So if you think of anything after this, you can obviously drop me a line, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Wendy. That's really a lot to really digest, and really the preparations that the medical students have to do is really not something as simple as, hey, tomorrow I would like to be a medical doctor and let's apply. It takes time of preparation and a lot of thought and consideration, I'm sure. So we have some questions from our viewers. The first one is by P.L. Lee. His question is this the same pathway for those who are interested in veterinary medicine?
Yes, basically everything. When I say medicine, I'm talking about veterinary science, dentistry, and medicine. They're all equally competitive applications, so we would expect the same kind of procedures for those.
Okay. And then there's another question by Joanne Menon. How vital is A-level maths to an application to study medicine? And I think she's also asked about, is maths at O levels also required?
Maths at O levels or GCSE is not required. Generally, they want a spread of A levels. Obviously, they want the sciences and they want good grades. I would say not many universities are specifically for maths, but it is a preferred subject. So my suggested combination would be chemistry, biology, and maths, and then another subject if they wanted to do that. That would be a good, safe thing, really.
Okay. Then the next question would be from Vicky Lim. She asks, do we register for Ucat on the 1st of July 2020, meaning this coming July, for the exam in year 2021? I think maybe there's a misunderstanding here. Is there?
Sure. You have to take the exam in the year that you were applying to medical school. So if you're applying in 2020, if you're applying for 2021, then you will register in this July to take the exam, and then you will take it somewhere between August and October.
I see. Okay. So I hope that question is answered. And Jasmine Choa, how about medical courses in Russia? Does this apply to medical courses in Russia? Does this apply?
Okay. I'm afraid I don't know much about the Russian medical courses. There are a wide range of medical courses all over the world, of course, and what I would recommend is that you obviously go to the websites. The most important thing is going to be, is it taught in English? Is it recognised by the Malaysian government if they're planning to come back to study in Malaysia or to practice in Malaysia. So those are the considerations. There are, of course, good courses in Egypt. There's good courses in India. So there's a whole wide range of places that you do have to look carefully at the types of courses that are on offer and whether they can come back and practice from that university afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's really important to look at that list. Yeah. All right. Then we have a question, by Joanne Menon. What support does KTJ offer to local students who will need to have SPM level Malay and history credits?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not in a position to offer tuition for that. So basically a student that needs to get that, they have got all the way until they graduate to get those qualifications. So my advice would be it's something that they need to do while they're at university, and they need to practice for it, they need to study for it. I believe the Bahasa is quite difficult as well, and so it might be something that they come back and have tuition for in the holidays or whatever, and then when they're ready, they can go online and book their test and so on.
All right. Thank you for that. And let's see. So we have maybe 2 more questions. One is by Jasmine Choa. How much is the total cost getting the medical degree in Ireland? I think that should be about an estimate cost.
Yeah.
You should be referring to.
Expensive is all I'm going to say. So I wouldn't know what it would be in Malaysian ringgit, but it is cheaper than the UK. But I think it depends on what the rate is like. But you would need to go and look at the individual websites for that. Really, it's not something I get involved with because it's not my decision. So
Okay.
not my money. I would be, obviously my part of it would be to make sure that the parents are happy with their application choices. But that's something I'm afraid you would need to look at in terms of the university. But there are varieties. So the twinning programs obviously is very good in terms of how much it costs in Malaysia. If you're applying to Scotland, then they tend to have one fixed fee over the 3 years, whereas obviously in England, and I think it's the same in Ireland, the fees will go up each year. So those are the kind of things to think of, and living costs as well. Lots of our students, we've had students that get offers. We've had students that have offers for UCL. And so on, but it's it's an expensive place to live, so that might sometimes even though they've got an offer for UCL medicine, they may decide to go to Dundee or Edinburgh because it's a cheaper option. So that's something that you might want to consider as well. I should point out as well, we have a student this year that has got into Cambridge to study medicine, which is amazing because my mantra is always don't apply to Oxford or Cambridge because it's almost impossible to get in. And in fact, that's what the admissions tutors say when they come out from Oxford and Cambridge as well. Don't even bother. So obviously these hairs, these grey hairs here, that was that child. But thankfully he proved me wrong, and we obviously advised him of the implications of this application and how competitive it was. But he did get in. But in terms of cost, that is a very, very, very expensive. Something like £128,000 a year.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, definitely has to this. I mean, the student definitely has to have, great interest and come out and be successful.
Absolutely. And then look after the parents, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully the parents at least will get medical, free medical care or something like that.
Yes.
Okay. And we have, maybe do you have time for just 2 more questions? Yeah.
Yes.
So for the medic ECA, is that one particular ECA or is it a variety of ECAs for those interested in medicine? And it's a particular one. And Ivy Simon has asked for the Form 4s.
At the moment, it has just been for the sixth form. For the Form 4s, we do invite all the Form 4s to all the Form 4, Form 5 and the sixth form get invited to all the academic lectures that we have, which are often medicine related or science related. We also invite them to the Oxbridge talks, which quite often have a medical theme as well. Dundee University had a big medical science and other engineering and stuff as well, day, and a lot of our Form 5s and Form 4s came to that as well, to find out what it's like to study medicine. So there are things, but traditionally we have focused just on the upper six, the upper six and the lower six for medicine, but we are looking actually at how we can extend a programme just for perhaps the Form 4s and 5s to establish an interest in that, and that may be run as a lunchtime club. So watch this space.
Yeah, but I think we are more concentrated on the lower six and upper six because they are directly going to be, involved in the application, whereas the Form 4s and Form 5s, they are quite some time away, and they are more of like thinking about joining. And
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And also, there's plenty of things that they can do with, as I think you know, we haven't been able to have it this year because of COVID, but we usually have careers days, and we have lots of speakers that come in for medicine as well. And last year, our Form 4s had a careers week, and students went off all over the place to do a day's worth of work experience. And a lot of Form 4s went off to a hospital in KL that was specialised in fertility, actually. And so they got to see an in vitro fertilisation, and they got to see all sorts of really interesting things. So something a bit different. Normally, it's all saws and hammers and hip replacements or something, but this was something that was very different, and students came back really engaged. So they do get the kind of more broader support that I was talking about earlier in Form 4 and 5 in a different way, and then obviously it becomes very specific when they come into the sixth form.
Yeah. Okay, we have one last question by Mei Chan. How does KTJ support in terms of voluntary experience and work experience?
We interview all the sixth forms once per half term. So part of the questions that we would ask would be, academic, pastoral, internships, EPQ, and so on. So there's a kind of like checklist of things that we talk to the students about. And we do encourage students under normal conditions to do internships or work experience in the large holidays. So that's something that we can help with, but they also use their own initiative, and we help them to write the letters and so on. In addition, as I said, I think there is quite a strong sense of community action in KTJ. So there are lots of societies and clubs that are community based, and so we've got Interact Club, Red Crescent Society, Leo Club. I think those are the main ones. So they're involved, as I said, with community projects such as working with orphans, working in old people's homes, doing first aid, working in the soup kitchen. And then we also have a charity that we're very much involved in that's based in Manting called NZ. And that was actually... that project was actually initiated by a sixth former last year and has grown into something amazing, really. So there are lots of opportunities to volunteer, both outside the school, but also within the school. That we have opportunities for the sixth formers to teach our support staff English. So a lot of our sixth formers are teaching our gardeners or our kitchen staff, or our security guards, or all those really very important staff that school needs to run. Maybe their English isn't as good as they would like. So they've been offering them English lessons, or they've been teaching reading to their juniors, or listening to them read, or they've been helping their juniors as with particular subjects, peer mentoring and so on. So there's lots of opportunities to interact and to volunteer in many different ways.
Yeah, now I would like to add on to what you mentioned about taking personal initiative. Parents can actually reach out to their friends who are medical doctors or in any medical profession for that matter, and to speak to their friends and say, how can my child, integrate themselves and offer themselves as to volunteer in their work.
Absolutely.
And I think that is also one way. And parents also, they have some family doctors that you can probably speak to and reach out to them and ask them, is there a way that they can offer some opportunity. So that's some ideas for our viewers here, and so yeah, I think we've answered all the questions, and I really hope that everyone has found this session useful and an eye opener. And thank you so much, Wendy, for being with us and sharing with us. I mean, talking for 1 hour, that's really long. But there's just so much to cover, honestly.
There is.
Yeah.
I should probably finish this and go, oh, I forgot to mention so and so.
Yeah. So please feel free to email Miss Wendy Jones if you have any further questions that may just pop up while after this session. All right. Yeah, and that's her email address. So please take note. Maybe take out your phone and take a picture. That would be quick. And so it's just nice to see everyone, and we're glad to have run this session, and I hope it's been useful for you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Angela. And thank you very much for listening, everybody. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.